The plasma bolt missed Queen Liara's head by inches, scorching the golden wall behind her throne. She didn't flinch. 3 months of marriage to a human had taught her that survival meant staying calm when death came calling. The Krell warships had broken through the planetary shields 10 minutes ago, and now their shock troops were burning through the palace doors. Her husband stood at the bottom of the throne steps, wearing nothing but simple combat fatigues. No armor, no weapon in hand. Jake Morrison looked almost bored as the massive doors exploded inward, showering the hall with molten metal. Liara's royal guard formed a defensive line, their energy shields humming to life. 12 of her best warriors, each trained since childhood in the art of war. The Krell poured through the breach, their forearms wielding plasma rifles and blade weapons that could cut through starship hull plating. Jake walked forward. "Stay back, human!" Commander Vex shouted. "This is not your—" The first Krell soldier never finished raising his weapon. Jake moved with speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone without cybernetic enhancement. He crossed 15 feet in a heartbeat, drove his fist through the soldier's chest plate, and ripped out something vital. The Krell dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Liara felt her breath catch. She had married Jake as part of a peace treaty between Earth and the Zalvian Empire. Her advisors said humans were weak, that they died easily, that they needed machines to even survive in civilized space. They said the marriage was symbolic, a gesture to keep Earth's growing military from expanding further into their territory. Nobody told her that humans were weapons wearing skin.
Jake caught a plasma bolt with his bare hand.
The energy discharged harmlessly around his fingers as he crushed the rifle barrel and used it to club 3 Krell warriors into the walls hard enough to crack stone. His movements were efficient, brutal, and completely unstoppable. The royal guard stood frozen, watching as this unarmored human tore through soldiers that should have killed him 20 times over. A Krell officer roared commands in their clicking language, and the remaining troops tried to flank Jake from 3 directions. He grabbed a fallen energy blade, spun it once to test the weight, and then became a storm of violence. Limbs separated from bodies, weapons shattered. The marble floor turned slick with alien blood. Lyra had seen battles before. She had led armies, watched her generals orchestrate brilliant campaigns, witnessed the might of her empire's war machines. Nothing compared to watching her husband fight. He wasn't using strategy or tactics. He was simply removing obstacles between himself and the threat to his wife. The last Krell soldier tried to run. Jake threw the energy blade with perfect accuracy, pinning the warrior to the doorframe. Then he walked back to Lyra, breathing normally, not even winded. "You okay?" he asked. She stared at the carnage. 23 Krell soldiers lay dead or dying. The battle had lasted 90 seconds. "What are you?" she whispered. Jake smiled. That easy human smile that had charmed her during their awkward courtship. "Just a guy from Denver. But my species doesn't really do the whole peaceful surrender thing. We're kind of stubborn that way." Alarms blared through the palace. More Krell ships were landing outside. An entire invasion force, thousands of soldiers, all betting that killing the Queen would break the Empire's alliance with Earth. They were about to learn why humanity had gone from primitive planet to galactic power in less than 2 centuries. Jake cracked his knuckles. "Should probably handle that. Don't want them ruining the gardens." "You spent a lot of time on those." He walked toward the shattered doors, leaving his terrified wife and her shocked guards behind. Outside, the Krell army was forming battle lines, their war machines rolling across the palace grounds. Commander Vex finally found his voice. "My queen, we need to evacuate. Even he cannot fight an entire army." Liara watched her husband's back as he disappeared into the smoke and chaos. For 3 months, she had wondered if Earth's government had tricked her, if Jake was really just a simple colonist like he claimed. Now she knew the truth. Earth hadn't sent her a diplomat. They had sent her a demonstration. The sound of screaming started outside, mixed with weapons fire and the crash of falling metal. Liara walked to the broken doors and looked out at her gardens, where thousands of Krell soldiers were learning the same lesson their advance team had just paid for. Humans didn't need armor. They didn't need fair fights. They didn't even need backup. They just needed a reason to stop holding back. The Krell invasion of Zalvian Prime lasted 4 hours. By the end, military historians would struggle to classify what happened as a battle. Battles implied 2 sides fighting. What occurred in the palace gardens and the city beyond was something else entirely. Jake moved through the Krell formations like a force of nature. The 1st Battalion tried to overwhelm him with numbers, sending 200 soldiers in a coordinated assault. He broke their line in 30 seconds, using their own weapons against them once his fists weren't enough. Energy rifles became clubs. Plasma grenades got thrown back at their launchers. A Krell battle tank found itself flipped onto its back, its pilot dragged out and used as a shield against his own squad. Liara watched from the palace balcony, her royal guard standing useless beside her. Commander Vex had tried 3 times to convince her to retreat to the underground bunkers. She refused. Something inside her needed to see this, needed to understand what her marriage really meant. "My queen," Vex said quietly. "What kind of creature can do this?" "A human," she replied. But that wasn't quite right, was it? She had met other humans in the 3 months since the wedding. Earth's diplomats, traders, even a few tourists brave enough to visit an alien empire. They had seemed normal, fragile even. They wore environmental suits outside controlled atmospheres. They complained about the gravity. They got sick from eating the wrong foods. Jake had never worn an environmental suit. He ate everything put in front of him. And now he was fighting an atmosphere that should have been burning his lungs. A Krell gunship swooped low, its cannons tracking Jake's position. He jumped, clearing 30 feet straight up, grabbed the gunship's landing skid and tore it clean off. The ship spun out of control and crashed into a fountain that had stood for 3,000 years. "How is he so strong?" one of the guards whispered. Their species evolved on a heavy gravity world, but the biological reports said they were only moderately stronger than our people. Liara remembered something Jake had mentioned during their honeymoon, back when she still thought humans were just another spacefaring race. They had been discussing their childhood, and he had talked about something called boot camp, military training. He said it was normal, that most human nations had some version of it, that millions of humans went through it every year. She had assumed it was similar to Zalvian military academies. Tactical training, weapons practice, leadership development, civilized warfare. Now she realized humans didn't have a concept of civilized warfare. Jake grabbed a Krell officer by the helmet and threw him through 3 other soldiers. The impact crater they left in the marble courtyard was 6 inches deep. He picked up a plasma cannon that normally required a 2-person crew to operate and fired it one-handed, sweeping the beam across an entire Krell platoon. "He's not even trying," Vex said, his voice hollow. "Look at his face. He's not angry. He's not afraid. He's just working." The commander was right. Liara could see Jake's expression between attacks. Calm. Focused, almost relaxed. This wasn't a desperate struggle for survival. This was a man doing a job he was trained for. Earth hadn't sent her a husband. They had sent her a soldier, and from the looks of it, probably not even one of their best. The Krell seemed to realize their ground assault was failing. Their command ship opened fire from orbit, sending a beam of concentrated energy down toward Jake's position. Lyra screamed a warning, but it was useless. The beam struck with the force of a small nuclear weapon, vaporizing everything in a 100-foot radius. For 5 seconds, there was only smoke and the smell of ozone. Then Jake walked out of the crater, his clothes burned away, but his skin already healing from whatever internal technology humans carried. He looked up at the command ship, tilted his head slightly, and smiled. "Oh no," Liara whispered. Jake bent his knees and jumped. Not a normal jump. Eee! He launched himself upward with enough force to crack the marble beneath his feet, rising up and up and up, 200 feet, 500, 1,000. He was flying, propelled by nothing but muscle and whatever impossible biology Earth had gifted its children. The Krell command ship tried to evade. Too slow. Jake hit the hull like a missile, punching through the armor plating and disappearing inside. "This is impossible," Vex said. "No biological creature can survive in space. He'll die in seconds." Liara didn't bother arguing. She just watched as the command ship began listing to one side. Explosions bloomed along its length. Escape pods launched in a panic. Then the entire ship broke in half, both pieces tumbling toward the city. Jake emerged from the wreckage, falling back toward the ground. He landed in a crouch next to a decorative fish pond, knee-deep in water, and stood up brushing debris off his shoulders. The remaining Krell forces broke. Professional soldiers, each one a veteran of a dozen campaigns, ran for their lives. Their dropships launched without waiting for full crews. Their armor units retreated at maximum speed, abandoning weapons and supplies. It took Jake another hour to hunt down the stragglers. When he finally returned to the palace, covered in ash and blood that wasn't his, Liara met him at the garden entrance. Her entire government had assembled behind her, ministers, generals, advisors, all of them staring at the human who had just ended an invasion by himself. "Sorry about the gardens," Jake said. "I'll help replant them. My mom taught me about flowers and stuff when I was a kid." Liara looked past him at the destruction. Craters everywhere, burning wreckage, thousands of bodies. brought 3 full battle groups to her world, enough firepower to conquer a dozen planets. One human had destroyed them all. "Jake," she said carefully, "when Earth proposed this marriage alliance, they told us you were a colonial administrator, someone who managed agricultural settlements." "Yeah, that's my current job. They said you had no military background. Well, I did my service. Everybody does. But I've been civilian for almost 8 years now. 8 years removed from military service, and he could still do this." Liara felt something cold settle in her chest. How strong were active human soldiers? What could their actual warriors accomplish? "The Krell will return," Minister Doran said from behind her. "This was only a vanguard." "Their main fleet won't come," Jake interrupted. "I sent a message when I was up in their command ship. Let their government know that if they attack again, Earth won't just send farmers like me, they'll send actual military units." That usually gets people thinking. The way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, like threatening an empire was just another task to check off his list. "What are you people?" Liara asked again. Jake's expression softened. He reached out and took her hand, the same hand that had crushed alien weapons and torn through starship hulls. His touch was gentle. "We're survivors," he said. "Our planet tried really hard to kill us for about 200,000 years. Bad weather, predators, diseases, other humans. We got good at not dying. And when we finally made it to space and found out the galaxy was full of other people who also wanted to kill us, well..."
Old habits came back real quick.
He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "But I meant what I said at our wedding. I'm going to be a good husband. Protect you. Build a life together." He gestured at the burning wreckage behind him. This was just taking out the trash. Liara had married him for peace. A political arrangement to stop a war before it started. She had expected awkward dinners and separate bedrooms and maybe producing an heir someday if they could figure out the biological compatibility issues. She hadn't expected to fall in love with a monster wearing a farmer's smile. "Come inside," she said quietly. "You need to clean up, and we need to talk about what happens next. Because the Krell weren't the only empire watching. A dozen other civilizations had seen humanity expand across the stars, had marked them as a threat, had been planning their response. Now they knew what Earth's peace offerings really meant. Marry one of us, and we'll protect you. Attack one of us, and we'll end you." The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that Lara now understood completely. Humans didn't build peace through treaties and diplomacy. They built it through overwhelming force delivered with a smile and an apology for the mess. And Jake Morrison, former soldier turned farmer turned royal consort, was just one example of what 6 billion humans could do when they decided to care about something. The Zalvian Empire had wanted peace. They got something far more valuable. They got Earth's protection. God help anyone who tested it. The emergency council meeting lasted 6 hours. Liara sat on her throne, still wearing the formal robes she had put on that morning for what was supposed to be a peaceful diplomatic reception. Jake stood beside her, now cleaned up and wearing fresh clothes, looking completely unbothered by the ministers arguing about his existence. "We need to understand the full extent of human capabilities," General Corrin insisted, pacing in front of the assembled government. "If one civilian human can destroy a Krell invasion force, what can their military accomplish? What weapons do they possess that we don't know about?" "I don't have any weapons," Jake said mildly. "Just me." The general stopped pacing. "That is precisely what concerns us. Your species violates every biological principle we understand. The energy requirements alone for what you did today should have killed you. The acceleration forces, the vacuum exposure, were pretty tough," Jake agreed. "Comes from the high gravity and thin atmosphere back home. Plus the food chain was trying to eat us for most of our evolution, so we adapted."
Minister Doran leaned forward, his 6 eyes narrowing.
"Adapted. You make it sound so simple. Do you have any idea how long adaptation takes? Millions of years of evolutionary pressure. Your species only became spacefaring 200 years ago. Before that, you were barely industrial. Yeah, well, we had a few rough centuries before the space age. Lots of wars. Chemical weapons, nuclear bombs, biological plagues, stuff that would have wiped out most species. We just kind of pushed through it. The council chamber went silent. "You survived self-inflicted apocalypses," Liara said slowly. "Multiple apocalypses." Jake shrugged. "Humans are hard to kill, even when we're trying to kill ourselves. My great-great-grandmother lived through the Asian water wars and the North American collapse. She used to say the secret to human survival was being too stubborn to die. Probably some truth to that. Commander Vex, still looking shaken from watching the battle, spoke up. When the Zalvian Empire first encountered humans, our scientists studied your biology. They said you were unremarkable. Standard carbon-based life, similar strength to a dozen other species, nothing exceptional. Those scientists didn't test us properly, Jake said. They took samples from diplomats and traders, people who grew up on space stations and colony worlds with normal gravity and safe environments.
They didn't test anyone from Earth.
We're different. How different? General Corrin demanded. Earth's gravity is twice what you've got on most civilized worlds. The atmosphere has less oxygen. The weather swings from freezing to boiling. Solar radiation is higher, and the whole biosphere evolved to be as lethal as possible. Every plant has poison or thorns. Every animal is either a predator or prey that developed nasty defenses. Even the bacteria and viruses are aggressive. He said it like he was describing a nice neighborhood. Humans from Earth spend their entire childhood adapting to an environment that would kill most galactic citizens in hours. By the time we're adults, we're basically walking tanks compared to everyone else. But you said you were a farmer, Liara interrupted. Not a soldier. I was a soldier for 6 years, Marines. Did 2 combat tours against the Viridian Collective when they tried to claim the outer colonies. After my service, I went into agriculture on New Montana. Growing crops is actually pretty similar to combat operations. Planning logistics, dealing with problems that want to kill your resources. The casual way he equated farming with warfare made several ministers shift uncomfortably. So every human from Earth has this capacity for violence? Minister Doran asked. Your entire population? Pretty much. Basic training is mandatory for citizenship. Even if you don't serve in combat roles, everyone learns how to fight, how to survive, how to kill if necessary. It's just part of growing up. General Corrin sat down heavily. You've militarized your entire species. No, Jake corrected. We've prepared our entire species. There's a difference. Most humans live normal lives. We have artists, teachers, scientists, parents raising kids. We're not warmongers. But if something threatens us or people we care about, yeah, we know how to respond. He looked at Liara, and his expression gentled. I didn't want to fight today. I wanted to have breakfast with my wife and maybe work on that irrigation project we were planning for the eastern provinces. But the Krell made a choice, and I responded. That's all. That's all, Vex repeated quietly. He says that like he didn't just rewrite our understanding of warfare. Liara stood up, drawing everyone's attention. The real question isn't what Jake can do. It's what this means for the Empire. The Krell attacked because they saw our alliance with Earth as a weakness. They thought humans were fragile, that we had made a poor bargain. Other civilizations likely think the same. They will not think that anymore, Doran said. News of today's battle will spread. The Krell survivors will tell their government. Other species will hear the reports. And they'll be scared, Corrin added. Terrified. An entire empire, frightened of a single biological species. This could trigger a coalition against Earth. Multiple civilizations banding together to eliminate the human threat before it grows. Jake laughed. Actually laughed. Everyone stared at him. Sorry, he said, not looking sorry at all. It's just, we've been dealing with that exact scenario for 50 years. Why do you think Earth has been so careful about expansion? Why we propose marriage alliances and trade agreements instead of just taking what we want? We know we're scary. We're trying not to be too scary. You're failing, Lara said dryly. Yeah, probably, but here's the thing. Earth doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We've got enough problems managing our own planets. What we want is stability. Safe trade routes, peaceful borders, places where our citizens can live without worrying about invasion. He gestured around the council chamber. Your empire is old, established, respected. You've got diplomatic relationships with dozens of species. You're civilized in ways humans are still learning. That's why Earth wanted this alliance. You give us legitimacy, and we give you security. Security, Minister Doran said. Is that what you call what happened today? Yeah. The Krell won't attack again. Neither will any other empire that hears about it. Your borders are now the safest in the galaxy, because everyone knows that attacking Zalvia means fighting Earth. And after today, nobody wants to fight Earth. Liara saw it then, the brilliant and terrifying simplicity of it. Earth had looked at the galactic political landscape and realized they couldn't win through conventional diplomacy. They were too new, too strange, too frightening. So instead, they offered protection. They turned their biggest weakness into their greatest strength. How many others? She asked Jake. How many other alliances has Earth made like ours? 17, as of last month. Marriages mostly. A few adoption ceremonies with species that don't do marriage. 2 blood brotherhood rituals with the warrior cultures. 17 empires, General Corrin breathed, all protected by human soldiers. Former soldiers, Jake corrected. Most of us are civilians now. But yeah, if someone attacks any of Earth's allies, we respond. It's part of the treaty terms. An attack on you is an attack on us. The implications crashed down on the Council. The Zalvian Empire wasn't just allied with Earth. They were part of a network, a coalition of civilizations all sheltering under humanity's violent umbrella. This changes everything, Liara said. Every treaty, every diplomatic relationship, every trade agreement, other empires will have to treat us as extensions of Earth. Or they'll try to break the alliance, Doran warned. Sow discord, turn us against the humans. Make us question whether we want to be associated with a warrior species. Jake met the minister's eyes. Do you want to break the alliance? Silence filled the chamber. Then Lyra spoke. No. The marriage was political when it began, but that doesn't make it any less real. Jake is my husband, for better or worse. And today he proved that Earth keeps its promises. My life was in danger, and he eliminated the threat. That's what partners do. She took Jake's hand again, feeling the strength hidden beneath normal skin. Besides, after today, every empire in the galaxy knows that the Zalvian throne is protected by a human. That makes me effectively invincible, at least from conventional military threats. From a purely strategic standpoint, we've gained enormous leverage. General Corrin nodded slowly. The Queen is correct. This alliance just became the most valuable asset the Empire possesses. But we need to understand the full terms. If Earth sends a civilian administrator as protection for our Queen, what kind of forces could they deploy in a real crisis? You don't want to know, Jake said quietly. Yes, we do. Jake sighed. Okay. If things got really bad, Earth could deploy about 2 billion combat-ready personnel within a month. That's just the ground forces. The fleet is bigger. We've got about 15,000 warships, ranging from corvettes to dreadnoughts. And we're building more every day. The numbers hit like physical blows. 2 billion soldiers, Vex whispered. That's more than our entire population. Plus the fleet, Doran added. They could overwhelm most of known space. But we don't want to, Jake emphasized. Seriously, we're not interested in conquest. We just want to make sure nobody messes with us or our friends. That's the whole point. Lara understood now why Earth had been so careful, so diplomatic, despite their overwhelming power. They weren't afraid of other civilizations. They were afraid of themselves, of what they might become if they stopped holding back. Humans had evolved as apex predators on a nightmare world, had survived their own attempts at self-destruction, and had emerged into space carrying the violence of their past with them. They could have conquered the galaxy easily. Instead, they chose to offer protection. It was, in its own way, the most human thing possible, turning their capacity for destruction into a shield for others. We need to draft new protocols, Liara decided. Military coordination with Earth forces, emergency communication systems, contingency plans for various threat scenarios. If we're going to be part of this alliance network, we should leverage it properly. Agreed, Corrin said. I'll begin coordination with Earth's military command, and we need to address the political fallout, Doran added. Other empires will want reassurances that we haven't become a human puppet state. We haven't, Liara said firmly. We've gained a powerful ally, nothing more. The Zalvian Empire remains independent and sovereign. She looked at Jake. Right? Absolutely. Earth doesn't want to run your government. That's your job. We're just here to make sure you get to keep doing it. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, covering logistics and protocols and political strategies, but the core truth was already established. The Zalvian Empire and Earth were bound together now, not just by treaty, but by blood spilled in defense of that treaty. When the council finally adjourned, Jake and Liara walked back to their quarters through halls filled with servants and guards who couldn't stop staring at the human who had saved their world. This wasn't how I imagined our marriage going, Liara admitted once they were alone. Same. I was expecting a lot more diplomatic receptions and state dinners. Maybe some awkward in-law visits. She laughed despite herself. Your parents wanted to visit next month. I think I should warn them that their son is now famous across the galaxy as the human who destroyed an invasion fleet solo. They'll just be glad I'm keeping busy. Mom always worried I'd get bored with farming. They reached their quarters, and Liara paused at the door. 3 months of marriage, and they had been taking things slow, figuring out this relationship that had started as political necessity. Tonight felt different. Jake, when you fought today, were you ever actually in danger? He considered the question. Maybe. The orbital strike was pretty close. If it had been a full nuclear barrage instead of just an energy beam, I might have had problems. And if they'd brought really heavy weapons, anti-ship cannons or something, that could have been trouble. But conventional weapons, soldiers with rifles and armor, none of that threatened you at all. It would take a lot more than what the Krell brought. Liara tried to imagine what a lot more meant in human terms. Failed completely. I want you to train my royal guard, she said. Not to fight like humans, that's probably impossible, but to understand human combat doctrine, to know how to coordinate with Earth forces if needed. I can do that, though fair warning, your guards might get frustrated. Human fighting styles don't always translate well to other species. They need to try anyway. If we're going to be part of this alliance, my people need to understand their human partners. Jake smiled, that easy expression that somehow coexisted with his capacity for extreme violence. You know, when Earth Command assigned me to this marriage alliance, they said I should be diplomatic, respectful, patient, learn Zalvian customs, and make a good impression. Nobody mentioned anything about fighting an invasion. I imagine they thought it was unlikely. Yeah. Turns out, the galaxy is more interesting than anyone expected. He opened the door to their quarters, and they went inside. Through the windows, Lyra could see crews already working to clean up the battle damage, removing wreckage and beginning repairs. Tomorrow, she would have to address the Empire.
Explain what happened.
Reassure her people that they were safe. Figure out how to present her human husband as both protector and partner rather than as a walking apocalypse. Tonight, though, she just wanted to process everything. Do you regret it? Jake asked quietly. The marriage? Now that you know what I am? Lyra looked at him, really looked. She saw the man who had been kind to her during their awkward courtship, who had tried to learn her language and customs, who had spent hours helping plan agricultural improvements for provinces he'd never visited. She also saw the soldier who had torn through an army without hesitation, who had jumped into space to destroy a warship, who represented the violent potential of an entire species. Both versions were real. Both were Jake. No, she said. I don't regret it, though I wish Earth had been more honest about what they were sending me. Would you have agreed if they had been? Probably not. I would have been terrified. Are you terrified now? She considered. No. I'm a lot of things. Shocked, confused, probably still in denial about some of what I saw. But not scared. Because you're on my side. She stepped closer, reached up, and touched his face. You're my husband, my partner, my protector, and apparently my secret weapon against the entire galaxy. We'll figure out how to make this work. Jake pulled her close, and for a moment they just stood there, human and alien, bound together by politics and circumstance, and something that might eventually become love. Outside, the Empire buzzed with news of the battle. Across the galaxy, other civilizations received reports and tried to process the implications. Earth's diplomatic corps prepared for the fallout, but in the royal quarters of Zalvia Prime, a queen and her human consorts simply held each other and tried to imagine what their future might look like now that the galaxy knew the truth. Peace wasn't the absence of violence. Peace was having enough violence on your side that nobody dared disturb it. Earth had understood that lesson long ago. Now the rest of the galaxy was learning it too. The Krell response came 3 days later. Not another invasion, but an official diplomatic transmission broadcast across all standard channels. Liara watched it from her private study, Jake standing beside her as the Krell Sovereign appeared on the projection. The Sovereign was old, his forearms marked with the ritual scars of 100 campaigns. He spoke in the clicking language of his people, but the translation software rendered it into perfect Zalvian. The Krell Dominion acknowledges error in its assessment of the Zalvian Earth Alliance. We withdraw all territorial claims to Zalvian border systems. Furthermore, we formally request the opening of diplomatic channels with Earth government to discuss mutual non-aggression terms. The transmission ended. That's it? Lyra said. 3 days ago they tried to kill me, and now they're just giving up? That's how it works with most civilizations, Jake explained. They test your strength. If you win decisively, they back off and try to make friends. The Krell are warriors, but they're not stupid. They know they can't beat Earth, so they're cutting their losses. Minister Doran, attending the viewing remotely, spoke through the communication system. This is unprecedented. The Krell have been expanding for 3 centuries. They've never voluntarily withdrawn from contested territory. They have now, Jake said. And other empires watching will take note. The Zalvian Empire just became a lot more powerful by association. He was right. Over the next week, 17 different civilizations sent diplomatic requests to Zalvia Prime. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, mutual defense discussions. Species that had ignored the Zalvian Empire for centuries suddenly wanted to be friends. It would have been flattering if it wasn't so transparently opportunistic. They're scared, Liara said during a strategy session with her council. They're all calculating what it means to have humans involved in galactic politics. Let them be scared, General Corrin said. The general had spent the last 3 days reviewing Earth military doctrine and looked like he hadn't slept. I've been studying human warfare. They don't just fight to win. They fight to make sure the war never happens again. Total victory, complete surrender, no possibility of resuming hostilities. It's brutal, but it's effective. It's also terrifying, Doran countered. We're going to spend the next decade managing our reputation. Other empires already see us as dangerous because of our alliance. If we're not careful, we'll become isolated. Or respected, Lara said. There's a difference. We're not going to apologize for having powerful allies, but we're also not going to abuse that power. The Zalvian Empire will continue operating as it always has, with diplomacy and trade and cultural exchange. We just happen to have the best security force in the galaxy. She looked at the reports piling up on her desk. Requests for audiences, trade proposals, military alliances. Every empire in their sector wanted something from Zalvia now. Schedule the diplomatic receptions, she decided. We'll meet with everyone who wants to talk, but make it clear that Earth is our partner, not our puppet master. Any agreement with Zalvia is an agreement with Zalvia, not a backdoor to human favor. The next month was exhausting. Lara hosted ambassadors from 24 civilizations, each one trying to assess the human threat while maintaining diplomatic courtesy. Some were subtle about it. Others directly asked if Earth was planning galactic conquest. Jake attended many of these meetings, and his presence changed the entire dynamic. Ambassadors who might have been dismissive towards Zalvia became very polite very quickly when faced with the human who had destroyed a Krell invasion force. It's working, Doran admitted after a particularly successful negotiation with the Tellurian Combine. The other empires are treating us as a major power now. Our position has improved dramatically. At what cost? Vex asked. He had been quiet during the council meetings, clearly still processing what he had witnessed. We've become dependent on Earth. If they ever withdraw support, we'll be vulnerable. The question is whether the benefits outweigh the risks, and right now, they do. She pulled up a star chart showing Zalvian territory. Their borders had expanded by 12% in the last month, not through conquest but through diplomatic agreements. Systems that had been disputed for decades suddenly accepted Zalvian control once Earth's backing became clear. We're safer and stronger than we've been in a century, she said. That's because of Earth. Yes, we're dependent on them to some degree, but they're also dependent on us for legitimacy and diplomatic access. Vex challenged. Or are we just valuable assets to them? Resources to be used and discarded if circumstances change. Before Lyra could answer, Jake spoke up. You want to know Earth's real motivation? Fine. Here it is. 200 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse. We came really close to extinction. When we finally made it to space and found other civilizations, we looked around and realized the galaxy was heading toward the same fate. Empires fighting over territory, species competing for resources, everyone building bigger weapons and nursing old grudges. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Earth doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to prevent galactic suicide. We've been there. We know how it ends. So we're trying to build a different system, one where cooperation is rewarded and aggression is punished. The Alliance network isn't about control. It's about creating stability by threat of force, Vex said. Because that's the only language most civilizations understand. You don't build peace by asking nicely. You build it by making war too expensive to be worthwhile. The philosophy was brutal in its simplicity, but Lara had to admit it was working. Zalvian space hadn't been this peaceful in her lifetime. The next crisis came from an unexpected direction. The Viridian Collective, one of the more powerful empires in the sector, sent a formal challenge. Not to Zalvia, but to Earth. The message was delivered publicly, broadcast across all standard channels. The Viridian Collective questions Earth's claim to great power status. Your species is young, your civilization untested by time. We propose a demonstration of strength. Single combat between selected champions. If humanity wins, we will acknowledge your position. If we win, you will withdraw from our border territories and cease expanding. Jake read the message and sighed. They really don't learn, do they? Are you going to accept? Liara asked. Have to. If Earth backs down from a formal challenge, it undermines everything we've built. Other empires will see it as weakness. Can you win? He gave her a look. The Viridians are plant-based life forms. Strong, tough, but fundamentally different biology. Yeah, I can win. But you said you were a farmer, not a current soldier. Shouldn't Earth send a real military champion? Probably. But I'm already here, and it would take 2 weeks to get another representative to this sector. We might as well handle it now. The confidence in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it just reminded Lyra how differently humans viewed conflict. To them, single combat against an alien champion was just an inconvenience to be dealt with efficiently. The challenge arena was built in neutral space, aboard a massive station that served as an independent diplomatic hub. Representatives from 40 different civilizations came to watch. It was the kind of spectacle the galaxy loved, primal violence dressed up as political theater. Lyra attended with her full diplomatic escort. She wore her formal crown and robes, presenting the image of imperial power. Inside, she was terrified. Not because she doubted Jake, but because she was beginning to understand what he represented. Earth had sent humanity's weakest warrior to defend their claim to power. A farmer, 8 years removed from military service, out of practice and out of shape by their standards. And everyone watching knew he would still win. That was the real message. Not that Earth was strong, but that Earth's baseline was already beyond what most species could achieve at their peak. The Viridian champion entered the arena first. He was massive, nearly 12 feet tall, with bark-like skin and limbs that could crush steel. His name was Thornshield, and he had won 73 single combat victories over a 200-year career. Jake walked in wearing simple athletic clothes and no armor. The contrast was stark. Monster versus man. Except everyone watching knew which one was really dangerous. The combat rules were simple. No weapons, no outside assistance, fight until submission or death. The arena was a circular platform 500 feet wide, surrounded by energy barriers to protect the audience. Begin, the neutral arbiter announced. Thornshield charged immediately, moving with surprising speed for his size. His strategy was obvious. Overwhelm the smaller opponent with strength and reach. Jake sidestepped the charge, moved inside Thornshield's guard, and punched him in what approximated a torso. The impact echoed through the arena. Thornshield's bark skin cracked. He roared and swung a massive limb at Jake's head. Jake ducked, grabbed the limb, and broke it. The fight lasted 90 seconds. Lyra watched her husband systematically dismantle a legendary warrior. Every move was precise, efficient, devastating. When Thornshield finally collapsed, unable to continue, half his body was broken and his bark skin was split in a dozen places. Jake stood over him, not even breathing hard. Does the Viridian Collective accept Earth's position? He asked the Arbiter. The Viridian diplomatic delegation sat in stunned silence. Finally, their senior representative stood. We accept. Earth is acknowledged as a great power. The challenge is answered. The arena erupted in noise. Some species cheered. Others sat in shocked silence. Everyone understood what they had just witnessed. Earth hadn't just won the challenge. They had made it look effortless. Lara met Jake at the arena exit. He was checking his knuckles, which had been scratched by Thornshield's bark skin. You okay? She asked. Yeah, fine. Thornshield was tough. Good fighter. If I'd been regular human from a colony world, he probably would have won. But Jake wasn't regular human. None of Earth's people were, not really. They were survivors of a nightmare world, carrying the violence of their evolution to space. The diplomatic fallout from the challenge lasted weeks. The Viridian Collective, humiliated by their champion's defeat, became aggressive in other arenas. They began forming coalitions, reaching out to species that felt threatened by Earth's rise. They're building an alliance against us, Doran warned during a council meeting. At least 30 civilizations have signed preliminary agreements. They're calling it the League of Sovereign Systems. Let them organize, General Corrin said. He had finally accepted that human military power made conventional strategies obsolete. What are they going to do? The moment they take hostile action, Earth responds. And we've all seen what that means. We can't rely solely on intimidation, Myra argued. Eventually, someone will call the bluff. A coalition large enough might decide they can overwhelm Earth through sheer numbers. It's not a bluff, Jake said quietly. And numbers don't matter as much as you think. But the Queen is right. We need to give these civilizations a reason to cooperate beyond just fear. The stick only works if you also have a carrot. What kind of carrot does Earth have to offer? Doran asked. Technology, trade, protection from threats that aren't us. Most species in the galaxy are dealing with problems they can't solve alone. Pirates, resource scarcity, environmental collapse. Earth can help with all of that. Over the next month, Earth's diplomatic corps shifted strategies. Instead of just offering protection, they began offering solutions. Human agricultural techniques that could boost crop yields on failing worlds. Mining technology for resource-poor systems. Medical advances that could cure diseases affecting a dozen species. The League of Sovereign Systems began to fracture as individual civilizations realized they had more to gain from cooperation than conflict. It's actually working, Doran said, reviewing the latest diplomatic reports. Species that were hostile 2 weeks ago are now requesting Earth advisors and technical support. Fear opens the door, Jake explained, but actual help keeps it open. That's always been Earth's strategy. We scare the aggressive empires into backing off, then we help everyone else with real problems. Eventually, people realize we're better as allies than enemies. Liara was beginning to see the full scope of Earth's plan. They weren't conquering the galaxy through military force. They were building dependency through aid and expertise, making themselves indispensable to civilization after civilization. It was more insidious than conquest, and far more effective. 6 months after the Krell invasion, Liara stood on the palace balcony overlooking gardens that had been completely restored. New fountains had replaced the ones destroyed in battle. New flowers bloomed where plasma fire had scorched the earth. Jake stood beside her, as he often did these days. They had grown closer over the months, their political marriage evolving into something approaching genuine partnership. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked. "Sometimes. Miss the food, mostly. Colony food is fine, but nothing beats authentic Earth barbecue. I'm serious." He considered. "Yeah, I miss it. Miss the weight of real gravity. The smell of actual Earth air. Miss knowing that everything around me evolved alongside humans, that I'm not an alien wherever I go. You could go back, visit. I'd understand. Maybe someday. But my life is here now. With you. Building something new." Liara leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "The galaxy is changing because of what you are," she said. "Because of what all humans are. I wonder if people understand that yet. Some do. The smart ones. The rest will figure it out eventually." "And what happens when they do? When every civilization realizes that humanity is fundamentally different, fundamentally more dangerous? What happens to all these alliances and friendships when fear overrides common sense?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Then we remind them why they made those alliances in the first place. Why it's better to have humans as friends than enemies. And we hope that's enough." Below them, the city sparkled in the evening light. Beyond the city, the Empire stretched across dozens of worlds, protected now by the invisible shield of Earth's reputation. Liara had married a human for peace. She had gotten peace, of a sort, but she had also gotten a glimpse into humanity's nature, into the violence and strength they carried so casually. The galaxy was learning to coexist with Earth, learning to accept that humans were here to stay, that they were too strong to fight and too useful to exile. It was a fragile peace, built on a foundation of overwhelming force and reluctant cooperation, but it was peace nonetheless, and Queen Lyra would defend it, alongside her human husband, against any threat that dared disturb it, because that was what partners did. Even when one partner was an alien queen and the other was a walking apocalypse who liked gardening, they would build their future together, one day at a time, and hope the galaxy was smart enough to let them.